Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Right. Thank you everyone for your attention. And first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. Alhamdulillah, I'm very humbled and very excited to be here with so many esteemed individuals, professors and doctors. I'm not a doctor, my name is just Umar Munshi. I'm the founder of the Ethis Group and the president of the Islamic Fintech Alliance, which is a group of founders or startup entrepreneurs from around the world. Now, the first part of my presentation will be focused on the theory or the concept of crowdfunding, which I believe is critical and very, very important for Islamic finance, especially for the leaders of Islamic finance to understand and to figure out how best we can utilize this opportunity for the Muslim world and for the industry, inshallah. All right. The first part will be on theory, and the second part is focused more on what we have done, which is the application of crowdfunding in Islamic finance. And I'll leave it to the moderator to interrupt me because I can talk forever. But I'll start with the theory. So crowdfunding or crowd investment, or a generic term is marketplace financing, is where you have a platform that matches essentially funds and projects. So we as platforms, we are a pass-through, we are a matchmaker. There's funds on one side and projects on another. And the money goes directly to the project, and if there are returns, if it's an investment, the money goes back directly to the investors. So it seems very simple, and it is, but it is fundamentally different from how a bank functions or how a fund manager functions, where they have a specific role as an intermediary to facilitate the transaction, whereas a platform is just a matchmaker. So one way of looking at it is we are like Karim or Uber. On one side you have drivers, on one side you have people who need to take rides. Karim or Uber doesn't own any of the assets or the cars, just like us. We don't own, it's not our money, it's not our projects. We just match the two sides, okay? So that is the basic principle of crowdfunding. And the implementation or the application of crowdfunding in principle, depending on, of course, regulatory constraints, can be implemented in any sector, in any industry, and in principle, at any size, okay? Now, these are the top 5 markets. Data from a year and a half ago is probably more than doubled in most of these markets. These are the top 5 crowdfunding markets in the world today, mostly debt-based or financing-based crowdfunding. And you can see Indonesia, $1.9 billion is about a year and a half ago. Today, it has reached close to $10 billion. So $10 billion US dollars have gone through platforms to projects or individuals in Indonesia. That is the speed of crowdfunding in Indonesia, and I believe that there's huge potential in almost any other Muslim country. So what are our problems, and in what way can crowdfunding potentially solve those problems? The key here is that we are not part of the financial markets in that sense. Platforms facilitate real-world funding flows. So 2 funding flows. One is for investment in general to the underserved SMEs or projects. Usually, in many countries, it is very informal, unorganized, and because of that, they have issues and problems over time. So what a platform does is that it ensures or it provides services for this matchmaking to happen more effectively. We have the legal documents, we have the Sharia, we have the structuring, and we have the transparency and reporting. So that is our role. And even for charity, it's the same way. There's a lack of transparency, a lack of accountability, a lack of understanding, and that is what platforms also can provide. Okay? For investment specifically, there are 2 types and many, many hybrids in between. Yeah? So on one extreme, the normal term used is P2P or peer-to-peer financing, which is essentially loan-based or debt-based or limited term financing, right? Can be considered project financing. So here, of course, from the Islamic perspective, you can implement almost any kind of Islamic contract depending on the product, depending on the project. It can be istisna, which is what we do for our property projects in Indonesia, or it can be ijara or anything else that makes sense, that is appropriate for the kind of project that is being funded. And on the other extreme, you have equity crowdfunding, which is where SMEs or companies or projects with SPVs go to platforms and they issue shares to the public. All right? When I say the public or when I talk about the crowd, the reality in the mature crowdfunding markets today is that majority of the funds actually come from institutions to invest in the projects through platforms. Of course, retail is always there, and that's a key component of crowdfunding. So the difference is one is contract-based, one is financing and term-based, and the other extreme is actually the issuance of shares or equity or ownership in the business or the company or project, right? Now, I believe, and we believe, our team, inshallah, that crowdfunding is the future of Islamic finance. It cannot do everything, it cannot stand alone, but with crowdfunding, Islamic finance can really start to reach down to the underserved and the unserved. And that is what we see happening in Indonesia today. $10 billion have moved. Unfortunately, maybe I would say less than 1% is Islamic in a country like Indonesia, mainly because there is a lack of entrepreneurship and there's a lack of funds, Islamic funds that have entered. Most of the growth in Indonesia is actually driven by China. Now, today we are experiencing crowdfunding, I would say 1.0. There are two significant next steps that are already happening today, but the Muslim world needs to start getting involved in crowdfunding 1.0 before it goes to, the second or third phase. The second phase is where secondary markets are being allowed by regulators, which is already happening in the UK and in Singapore and potentially in Malaysia very soon. The second thing that the second wave or the second change is to implement blockchain or for crowdfunding using a concept called tokenization or digital securitization. That makes the investments potentially much cheaper cross-border, and it also fits into the secondary market approach. Right? So these two waves are already coming, but I believe Islamic finance needs to at least go into the first wave and later on move on to the next two phases. All right? So, I think it's the wrong slides. I have a workshop tomorrow, and these slides are actually meant for the workshop. I have a summarized version, but I'll just skip some parts because it will take too long to go through all these things. This is the growth of crowdfunding. You can see in Indonesia and other countries is moving very, very fast, right? So now, in the little time that I have left, I want to share briefly what we have done and what we are trying to do at Ethis. Ethis is the combination of the words ethical and Islamic. Of course, inshallah, to all of us, Islam and ethics are one and the same, but for the rest of the world, it's not necessarily the case. This is our our investment platform. You can go to ethis.co and choose the projects that you want to invest in. This is specifically our proof of concept over the past 6 years is to invest in social housing projects in Indonesia. You provide bridging funds to developers and contractors, and they then do either istisna, sometimes musyarakah, sometimes mudarabah, and you get the profits at the end of the project. All right? So it's not a loan, although it's peer-to-peer, technically. We are licensed in Indonesia to do this. The other platform that we have live is called Global Sedekah, which is a charity platform, and our focus to date has actually been to work with Islamic banks. Of course, you or any of you can donate directly to the projects that you see on the platform. You can use PayPal and Pay Halal, which is from Malaysia. But the driver of this platform is actually Islamic banks, and alhamdulillah, we have more and more Islamic banks in Malaysia coming on board. Right? This is our proof of concept for investment in Indonesia, where a total of 1,300 people from 60 countries have invested about $8-9 million into projects worth about $30 million
2 minutes
from around the world. Now, let's just pause on this slide for a while, because crowdfunding in the Muslim space, we started 5-6 years ago, but somehow still today, we are still one of the few leaders. I think there's a lack of entrepreneurship, and that's a problem we need to solve. But what I wanted to share here is what we've managed to accomplish was actually very, very tough. But alhamdulillah, we managed to do this small proof of concept where Muslims, I would say 95% of our investors are Muslims. These 1,300 investments are all first-time, almost all first-time investing in Indonesia. And this is pure online behavior without meeting us, without going to Indonesia. So this is new behavior in the Muslim world that I believe is unprecedented. And inshallah, last year we grew quite fast. Most of the growth last year came from the Middle East, whether it's Qatar, Dubai, Saudi, or other countries. There's a lot of investment now from retail moving to Indonesia, and alhamdulillah, we are facilitating that flow. Right? Alhamdulillah, last year we got license in Malaysia, license in Indonesia, and also going through an approval process in Dubai right now. Inshallah, Malaysia and Dubai will be launching in the next 2 months. And these are some of the organizations and banks that we are already working with. Al-Rajhi Malaysia, Kuwait Finance House Malaysia, Alliance Bank, and a few others in Indonesia. I believe, I know I don't have much time, but I believe the key for crowdfunding to play a significant role is through partnerships. Because as platforms, we have a very narrow role. But that narrow role is to bring together and to link up the different stakeholders, from the banks to the government bodies to the individuals and the community. And that's what, alhamdulillah, we are on track to do today. All right, I will skip these parts because we don't have time. And I will end with this last slide, inshallah. Our mission that we are all focused on is to drive or to lead the effective movement of capital across the world, in the Muslim world, inshallah, to the real economy. And that, I believe, is what Islamic finance is meant to serve: the people and the real economy and real world activities. And of course, through that, inshallah, our vision is to uplift not only, the ummah, the humanity, the whole world, inshallah, through the utilization of Fintech, right? So that is my presentation. I hope it was useful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.